when Gregory Scott Traver was not picked up by his colleague Jerry Lynn Dean on the morning of the 14th of June 1983, Gregory immediately started to panic. As Jerry lived nearby in an apartment complex on the northwest side of Houston, Gregory headed over to Jerry's house to see if everything was okay. As he got to Jerry's home, Gregory noticed that the door was slightly open, so he let himself in. Instantly, Gregory knew that something was off, as he saw that Jerry's motorcycle was missing and that the television had been moved. Hoping to find his friend alive and well, he started going through the house, looking inside every room. But devastatingly, Gregory stumbled upon the most horrific sight. Inside one of the spare bedrooms, Gregory found the body of his friend Jerry Dean, and close by was the body of a woman with a 3-foot-long pickaxe protruding from her heart. Who could have committed these brutal murders, and would they ever be found to face justice for their heinous actions? Following the gruesome discovery, Gregory immediately called the police, and they quickly arrived at the scene. Police were able to identify the two victims as 27-year-old cable installer Jerry Lynn Dean and 32-year-old office worker Deborah Ruth Thornton. Both had been bludgeoned to death. Jerry's toolkit and garden tools had obviously been rummaged through, and not only was the pickaxe found protruding from Deborah's body, but a hammer was found close to Jerry. Jerry had suffered some serious blunt force trauma to his head. It was clear that both victims had been aggressively struck with the pickaxe, with each victim enduring more than 20 blows. The crime scene was so horrific that even some of the most hardened police officers were haunted for years afterwards by the carnage. At first, police believed this had been a robbery gone wrong, as they knew that Jerry Dean's truck and custom Harley-Davidson, which he had stored in his house, were missing. But as they looked further into the slayings, they knew that this had to be something more. This murder was rageful and full of hatred, and there was no sign of forced entry. This had been a personal attack, and whoever had murdered the pair had done it with a clear motive, driven by intense anger, indicating a deeper level of animosity that needed to be unraveled. When they looked into both of their victims, they discovered that Deborah Thornton was a mother and wife to a different man. As it turned out, Deborah and her husband, Richard Thornton, had gotten into an argument the previous night, and Deborah had left and gone to a bar where she had met Jerry Lynn Dean and then gone back to his house. Police were therefore very suspicious of Deborah's husband, Richard Thornton, so they asked him a few questions. Richard quickly became their prime suspect, as they theorized that Richard had murdered both of them in a fit of rage over his wife's supposed infidelity. But after a lack of physical evidence, they quickly dropped him as a suspect and turned their attention onto the victim, Jerry Dean, to try and find out who might have wanted to kill him. As weeks went by, police questioned many people who knew Jerry Dean, and they discovered that Jerry Dean regularly hung out with a group of people, and within that group of friends was a woman called Carla Faye Tucker. When questioned by police, Carla readily admitted that she hated Jerry Dean. In 1980, Jerry had started dating Carla's friend and roommate, a woman called Sean, and twice Carla had thrown Jerry out of her apartment after his motorcycle dripped oil on the living room rug. In retaliation for Carla kicking him out of the house, Jerry Dean defaced some of Carla's photo albums, including the only photo she had of her mother. Following this incident, Carla hit him in the face very hard, breaking his glasses and causing the glass to enter his eye, and he had to go to the hospital. Police then learned that Carla was dating a man called Daniel Garrett, and Daniel just happened to know one of the detectives at the police station, Detective J.C. Mosier. Detective J.C. Mosier wanted to find out if Daniel Garrett was involved with the killings, so he arranged for a woman who was a mutual friend to call Daniel's brother Doug to try and find more information. In less than half an hour, the woman called Detective J.C. Mosier back and said that Doug was in tears and wanted to talk to him. Detective J.C. Mosier quickly went over to Doug's house to talk to him, and he was there with his own girlfriend, Carrie Tucker, who just happened to be Carla Faye Tucker's older sister. Doug claimed that his brother Daniel was involved in the murders, alongside Daniel's girlfriend Carla Faye Tucker. As it turned out, immediately after the killings, Carla and Daniel went over to Daniel's brother's house, Doug, in Jerry Dean's stolen truck and bragged about what they had done. To get more evidence, the police asked Doug to wear a wire and to try and get a confession from the pair, and Doug agreed. So as Doug spoke with Daniel and Carla for over an hour, the police sat outside in a van and they quickly opened up about the murder.
I saw them pictures and I tell you, it seemed like it could have been done neater.
Doug?
Yeah, it could.
Was both of them people asleep when y'all went in there?
Mm-hmm.
Did you wake them up or they just wake up?
The guy woke up, the girl started waking up. I told her to stick her head under the cover.
When you went over there and killed them people, did you go over there to do that?
Doug went over there, up, and didn't know what he was going to do.
But did you have that in your mind?
We probably shot him if we went over there to do it. Had a gun.
We went over there with the intentions to kill somebody.
It was a freak thing, man.
Yeah, we was all
Did y'all take that axe over there? It was already there.
Sitting right beside him.
What did they say about that? Sending fingerprints on it?
No, I seen it in the picture. It had tape on it. I didn't know if they'd stick the tape or not.
They won't stick that. We had gloves on.
Well, it's all done. I just, to tell you the truth, I wish it never would have.
They said it would.
They can't link nothing to nothing. No fingerprints, no nothing.
Unless somebody freaks out.
They told me that, they told me in these words, y'all are targets.
Oh, yeah,
They told us that if they had anything, they already had somebody arrested.
To me, it's like the work of the devil. It's just like the work of the devil. I don't believe y'all would have ever done anything like that if the devil didn't tell you.
Yeah, probably right.
At one point, Carla disturbingly even admitted that she had orgasmed with each blow of the pickaxe.
Carla?
Yeah.
Maybe me telling you that was stroke, was that you, did you? Did you really?
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm the girl too? I know you didn't hate her. I wish you could at least just took her out quick and easy.
I tried.
Finally, weeks after the murders, Daniel and Carla were arrested on the 20th of July, 1983. Carla Faye Tucker was born on the 18th of November, 1959, in Houston, Texas, to her parents Larry and Caroline, and she was the youngest of 3 sisters. Her father, Larry, was a longshoreman in the Gulf of Mexico, so he was often in and out of Carla's life. Her parents' relationship was also rocky because of infidelity, and they finally divorced when Carla was 10 years old. At this age, Carla also found out that she was not her father Larry's biological child, but rather the result of an extramarital affair. Carla had always felt like the ugly duckling between 2 blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fair-skinned siblings, but now she finally knew the truth. By the time she was 10 years old, she had been smoking marijuana for nearly a year, and before she was 11, she was injecting heroin. Carla said, "The influence of others, peer pressure. My sisters were into drugs, and they had a friend who was older. They always hung around with older people. There was a lot of drugs." Her mother was also not a good influence on her children. There was an instance when Caroline caught Carla sneaking marijuana in her bedroom, and instead of telling her off, her mother instructed her on the fine art of rolling. In her early teens, Carla started hanging out with an older crowd, and her first contact with sex came when she was 12, and she became a prostitute at age 14. When she was very young, her mother told her she could grow up to become anything, but her mother also gave her little guidance and encouraged her to be a prostitute as a teenager. Carla said, "My mother took me to a place where there was all men and wanted to school me in the art of being a cool girl. I wanted to please my mother so much. I wanted her to be proud of me, so instead of saying no, I just tried to do what she asked. The thing is, I knew deep down inside that what I was doing was wrong." Around this time, Carla also started showing signs of aggression. At 14, she attacked one of her fellow classmates, leaving her with 2 black eyes, and a year later at 15, she got into a fight with a man and a woman. Carla dropped out of school in the middle of the 7th grade without much parental disapproval, and when Carla was 16, she met and married a mechanic named Stephen Griffith. On the surface, the marriage appeared happy, but behind closed doors, they fought constantly. Stephen said, "We fist fought a lot. I've never had men hit me as hard as she did. Whenever I went into a bar, I didn't have to worry because she had my back covered." Carla was unhappy in this marriage and desired the freedom to live as she pleased, leading to the couple's separation. At the age of 20, her mother passed away on Christmas Eve due to the effects of drug abuse, and around this time, she began associating with bikers. During this period, she met her friend Sean, who later married Jerry Lynn Dean. Sean and Jerry subsequently introduced her to Daniel Garrett in 1981. Carla and Daniel immediately hit it off, quickly becoming a couple. Daniel allowed Carla to do as she pleased and didn't question her job as a prostitute. However, this relationship was unhealthy, constantly fueled by drugs and alcohol. On the evening of the 12th of June 1983, Carla, her sister Carrie, Carrie's ex-husband Ronnie, Daniel Garrett and their friend James Liebrandt gathered at Carla's home to celebrate Carrie's birthday. After Carrie and Ronnie left, between 2:30 and 4:30 a.m. the next day, Carla, Daniel and James departed after some partying, which included the ingestion of pills, marijuana, speed and alcohol, and they headed straight to Jerry Dean's apartment. Carla had mentioned her intention to visit Jerry's apartment to collect some money and intimidate him. She suggested that if he didn't pay up, they would steal his motorcycle, TV and stereo. Carla had secretly taken the keys to Jerry's home from Jerry's estranged wife, Sean, earlier on, enabling them to enter the property. Sean and Jerry had recently broken up after Jerry had assaulted her, so Carla's anger towards Jerry had escalated. 2 weeks prior, she had even mentioned the idea of offing Jerry. When she and Daniel entered the apartment bedroom, they found Jerry asleep in the spare room. Carla turned on the light and jumped onto Jerry, saying, "Don't move, motherfucker, or you're dead." As Jerry Dean awoke in utter shock, he grabbed onto Carla to try to push her off. In that moment, Daniel picked up a hammer and started hitting Jerry in the back of the head. Jerry began begging for his life. After being struck several times by the hammer, Jerry Dean started making a gurgling noise as his lungs filled with blood. Carla, annoyed by the noise, looked around the room and spotted one of Jerry's work tools on the floor, a pickaxe. Carla picked up the pickaxe and began attacking Jerry with it. As she did this, their friend James Liebrandt, who had been waiting outside, entered the apartment and walked into the bedroom. Here he witnessed Carla pulling the pickaxe out of a body, smiling and hitting it again while the body gurgled. James immediately ran out in complete shock and called his friend Ronnie to come and pick him up. Carla and Daniel then noticed a woman hiding under some sheets in the bedroom. Because she had seen them and heard their names, they decided to kill her as well. Deborah Thornton was then attacked by Carla with the pickaxe, and she was slowly bludgeoned to death. At one point, the pain was so unbearable for Deborah that she pleaded with the pair to just kill her quickly. A few hours later, in the early morning of the 13th of June, at 6:30 a.m., Carla and Daniel showed up at Doug's home in Jerry's truck. After unloading a motorcycle frame from the back of the vehicle, Carla said, "We offed Jerry Dean last night." Despite Doug's utter horror at what his brother and her girlfriend had done, he initially allowed them to hide part of the motorcycle in his garage, which he later got rid of. Carla also handed him Jerry's wallet, which he immediately burned in an ashtray. They also managed to get James Liebrandt and Ronnie to help get rid of Jerry's truck, despite James running away from the scene of the crime. Later that evening, Carla and Daniel were watching television when the news came on with a story about the murders. Upon seeing this, they laughed and giggled, claiming they were famous, and began bragging more and more about the murders to their siblings Doug and Carrie. Carla even gave her sister Carrie Deborah's wallet as a birthday present. At this point, Carrie was completely horrified and terrified by her sister's actions. She immediately got rid of the wallet and moved out of her sister's house, fearing that Carla might attack her as she knew too much. This then prompted Doug and Carrie to speak to Detective J.C. Mosier, leading to Carla and Daniel's swift arrest. Karla Faye Tucker went to trial on the 11th of April 1984 before a jury of 8 women and 4 men, presided over by a female judge, and she pleaded not guilty. Karla agreed to testify in Daniel Garrett's trial in exchange for the charges against her for Deborah's murder to be dropped. During the trial, a mountain of evidence was presented, and it was clear that Karla had brutally murdered Jerry Dean in a fit of rage. The defense called no witnesses, and the jury retired for only 70 minutes before convicting Karla of capital murder. The trial then entered the penalty phase, and the defense called a psychiatrist who testified that Karla had told her she had been taking drugs since the age of 9. She described Karla's state of mind to the court, how Karla had not slept in 3 days, and how she had been taking drugs and drinking on the night of the killings. The psychiatrist also told the jury that she didn't think it likely that Karla had derived sexual pleasure from the killings, even though she had boasted about having done so on the wiretap. Karla took the stand in her own defense and gave her version of the events, telling the jury that she did not feel the killings were real to her. She said, "I did not see the bodies. I do not remember seeing any holes or any blood." But the defense was weak, and with all the overwhelming evidence, after deliberating for nearly 3 hours on the 25th of April 1984, the jury recommended that Karla be sentenced to death by lethal injection. Karla Faye Tucker was convicted and sentenced to death at age 24, and she was sent to live on the women's death row. Daniel Garrett was tried separately, and he was also convicted and sentenced to death in November of 1984. However, he subsequently died of liver disease on death row in 1993. Karla stated that as she awaited trial in the Harris County Jail, her mind began to clear from years of drug abuse, and through meetings with jail ministry workers, she found religion and inner peace. During her time in prison, Karla embraced Christianity and found solace in her faith, and she even married a prison minister named Dana Brown by proxy in 1995.
Are you afraid of dying? No, I'm not. I'm not afraid of dying. I mean, I know where I'm going. I know that Jesus has already gone to prepare a place for me. I know that if I have to go February 3rd, that he's going to come and he's going to escort me personally. I believe that. So I have no fear of that, and I don't worry about myself, but I certainly am concerned for those who are going to be left behind, for my family and friends, my husband.
In an interview with CNN's Larry King while on death row at Texas's Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Karla revealed that in the fall of 1983, she stole a Bible after a prison ministry program, took it to her cell and began to read, ultimately coming to terms with the gravity of her actions.
What mostly hit me was his love, his love that just surrounded me.
She said, "I didn't know what I was reading, and before I knew it, I was in the middle of my floor on my knees, and I was just asking God to forgive me." And when she referred to her cruel actions on that fateful day, she said, I can't make sense out of it. I didn't care about anybody. I didn't care about myself." She added that at the time, it was inevitable that something like that was going to happen in her life, given her circumstances. She said, "I not only didn't walk around without any guilt, I was proud of thinking that I had finally measured up to the big boys." However, citing her newfound faith and clean prison record, Karla argued that she no longer met the criteria for being sentenced to death in Texas, as in her opinion, she no longer posed a threat to society.
When I was forgiven and I experienced that forgiveness, it freed me up inside to soar. It freed me up inside to go higher and to go deeper with the Lord. But when we're holding unforgiveness, we're blocking communication and intimacy with the Lord in our own lives, and bitterness can start to take root in us. Well, when God forgave me, I think he used that forgiveness and that love to reach down inside of me and take every root of evil, every root of horror that was in me, and literally pull it up and get rid of it. and go back in me and fill up with his love.
Carla expressed her desire to live in order to minister to other prisoners who were similarly lost, stating that she not only rejected the death penalty, but also opposed abortion and euthanasia. She further expressed her wish to have a child of her own. She said to Larry King, "If there is a change for the positive, and it's proven, and it's factual, why can't that be considered?" Many people questioned the sincerity of Carla's newfound belief in God, pondering whether she viewed her newfound faith solely as her best chance for salvation. Regardless of Carla's sincerity, public opinion was divided on whether the execution should proceed. The case even divided the families of the victims. Deborah Thornton's brother, Ron Carlson, advocated for Carla to be spared and participated in rallies at the state capitol in Austin, urging for clemency. On the other hand, Deborah's widowed husband, Richard, believes the matter wasn't as straightforward as sparing Carla from execution. He expressed frustration with the portrayal of Carla as Miss Saint.
The same person who looks out from that television set is the same person who looked straight at my wife and threw a pickaxe into her body.
Although she and her attorneys had played down her gender in their many pleas for clemency, the fact that she was a woman helped arouse international interest in her cause and generate appeals for mercy from figures including Pope John Paul II and religious broadcaster Pat Robertson. The European Union's Parliament passed a resolution asking that her sentence be commuted to life in prison with no parole, but this was denied. After the board's ruling, Carla's only hope was with the US Supreme Court, which turned down 2 appeals. In an extra bid to try and save her life, she sent a letter to George W. Bush on the 18th of January, 1998, of which some extracts were published. She said, "I am in no way attempting to minimize the brutality of my crime. It obviously was very, very horrible, and I do take full responsibility for what happened. I also know that justice and law demand my life for the 2 innocent lives I brutally murdered that night. If my execution is the only thing, the final act, that can fulfill the demand for restitution and justice, then I accept that. I will pay the price for what I did in any way our law demands it. I was advised by my attorneys to plead not guilty, and I was trusting their legal expertise. They knew I murdered Jerry and Deborah. I did not lie to them about it. I am in fact guilty, very guilty. I used to try and blame my mother because she was my role model and she fashioned and shaped me into what I was at an early age. I no longer try to lay the blame on my mother or on society. I don't blame drugs either. When I say that I was out of it on drugs the night I brutally murdered 2 people, I fully realize that I made the choice to do those drugs. Had I chosen not to do drugs, there would be 2 people still alive today. It was in October, 3 months after I had been locked up, when a ministry came to the jail and I went to the services. That night, accepting Jesus into my heart. 14 years ago, I was part of the problem. Now I am part of the solution. I have purposed to do right for the last 14 years, not because I am in prison, but because my God demands this of me. I know right from wrong, and I must do right. I don't really understand why you can't or won't consider my change for the good in my favor. I don't really understand the guidelines for commutation of death sentences, but I can promise you this: if you commute my sentence to life, I will continue for the rest of my life in this earth to reach out to others, to make a positive difference in their lives. I see people in here in the prison where I am, who are here for horrible crimes and for lesser crimes, who to this day are still acting out in violence and hurting others with no concern for another life or for their own life. I can reach out to these girls and try and help them change before they walk out of this place and hurt someone else. I am seeking you to commute my sentence and allow me to pay society back by helping others. I can't bring back the lives I took, but I can, if I am allowed, help save lives. That is the only real restitution I can give. But once again, Carla's request was denied by George W. Bush, and her execution was scheduled to proceed.
The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay. May God bless Carla Faye Tucker, and God bless her victims and their families.
After spending nearly 14 years on female death row at the Mountain View unit of Gatesville Penitentiary, Karla's execution day finally arrived. On the 2nd of February, 1998, Karla was flown the 175 miles to Huntsville and taken to the Walls unit to be placed in a holding cell next to the execution chamber. The next day, on the 3rd of February, Karla refused breakfast in her cell and was described by her guards as at peace. For her last meal, she requested a banana, a peach, and a garden salad with ranch dressing. She wrote a letter and had 2 visits. She was allowed half an hour with her husband, Dana Brown, and another half hour with a spiritual advisor. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected 2 last-minute calls for clemency, and Texas Governor George Bush ordered the execution to proceed on schedule. He stated that her case had been thoroughly reviewed, adding, "I have concluded judgments about the heart and soul of an individual on death row are best left to a higher authority." That evening at 6:35 p.m., wearing a white prison uniform and white tennis shoes, Karla was taken to the execution room. She selected 4 people to witness her death, including her sister Carrie Weeks, her husband Dana Brown, her close friend Jackie Onken, and Deborah Thornton's brother Ronald Carlson. Witnesses for the murder victims included Deborah Thornton's husband Richard, Deborah's son William Joseph Davis, and her stepdaughter Katie. Karla was asked if she had a final statement, and she turned her head towards the witness chamber and said into the microphone, "Yes, sir, I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and Jerry Dean's family, that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this." Karla then looked at her husband, watching from behind the screen, and said, "Baby, I love you. Everybody has been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I'm going to be face to face with Jesus now. Warden Baggett, thank all of you so much. You have been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I will see you all when you get there. I will wait for you." Karla then closed her eyes and seemed to move her lips in silent prayer, and at 6:45 p.m., 38-year-old Karla Faye Tucker died of lethal injection. It took her 8 minutes to die. Officials with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice said that Karla also could have requested a sedative but did not. Karla became the first woman executed in Texas since the Civil War, and only the second in the United States since the resumption of the death penalty in 1976. Outside the prison, there were demonstrations from both pro- and anti-capital punishment groups. Several hundred individuals representing both sides of the debate gathered behind yellow police lines. Some signs read things like, "Bye-bye Karla Faye, and forget injection, use a pickaxe." But others' signs read things like, "I'm ashamed to be a Texan, and Jesus loves Karla Faye, and so do I." Cheers went up from the pro-execution crowd when her death was announced.
Why should a woman receive any different treatment than a man? She has committed the same crime that men have committed, and she deserves the punishment that is the state law in Texas.
After her execution, her husband Dana said a few words to the press.
It's amazing what a woman in a 6x9 cell can reach so many people. Her gain today was our loss. Someone that has literally reached thousands of people for Jesus Christ, and even though she cried out for forgiveness, God gave her just what she needed, and that was love. And that's what we all need. But we feel like the system and the process has got to be changed. And that's no greater evidence than with Karla. But there's others besides Karla. We've got 5 coming up this month, it's my understanding. You know, I wish every one of y'all was there at their date or at their executions. I mean, it doesn't make any difference if they're a man or a woman. They're just a human being.
As did Deborah's brother Ronald Carlson, who had been against the death sentence.
I'd like to introduce myself to you folks that don't know my voice and my face. My name is Ronald Carlson. I'm the brother of the deceased Deborah Thornton, and I just want you folks to know that what I witnessed here today was a pure atrocity. The state of Texas, how they destroyed a very important person. They took the life of Karla Faye Tucker today, but I want you to know they only killed her body. Her spirit still lives on. It will continue through all of us. Jesus Christ has taken her up to be in heaven with her, and her spirit will continue. That's all I have to say. God be with you.
Regardless of your stance on this case, whether you think Karla was just putting on a show and still truly deserved the death sentence, or whether you believe she should have been forgiven and allowed to be granted clemency, the people we must always remember are the victims. They were not just names in a legal proceeding. They were real people with dreams, hopes, and loved ones who deeply mourn their loss. So I'll finish off this case as usual by saying, rest in peace, Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton.